Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something that underpins, well, almost every digital interaction you have. Cybersecurity's hidden architecture. It's so much more than just, the antivirus software on your laptop or the firewall at your office. Have you ever wondered what truly keeps your online banking info safe? Or maybe why your company has so many rules around your work laptop? We're about to explore the comprehensive, layered strategies organizations use to protect themselves from those ever-evolving cyber threats out there.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how it all weaves together the people, the policies, the tech. It's this really meticulously layered defense. It's a complex ecosystem, honestly.
Yep.
Understanding its parts is key to appreciating how our digital world stays, well, mostly secure.
We've dug through quite a stack of sources to bring you the essential insights on how organizations actually mitigate threats and attacks. Think of this deep dive as your personal guide, navigating the digital fortresses that protect our data, giving you those critical nuggets of knowledge you need. Okay, so when we talk about protecting digital assets, where do organizations even begin? It must feel like a huge task. Many turn to something called the COSO framework. What exactly is COSO, and why is it so foundational for cyber?
Right. SCISOSO stands for the Committee of Sponsoring Organizations. It's basically an advisory group. They provide crucial guidance on internal controls, fraud deterrence, and risk management. The original framework from '92 became a benchmark, really, and the updated COSO 2013, people often visualize it as a COSO cube. Imagine a Rubik's Cube, right? Each face could be one of COSO's objectives like operational effectiveness, reliable reporting, or compliance. And then running through it, you got the components like risk assessment or monitoring. The cube visual kind of brilliantly shows how twisting one part affects the whole thing. These elements don't work in isolation. Ultimately, COPENSO helps organizations assess their risks and develop strategies around both risk and, overall business performance. But what truly makes COPENSO powerful for cybersecurity isn't just its structure. It's how it forces organizations to embed security into every layer of decision-making, right from the board down. It's really about shifting that mindset from, oh, that's IT's problem to, no, this is everyone's business risk.
That sounds incredibly comprehensive, but I can imagine it might be daunting for organizations to actually implement. What's maybe the biggest hurdle companies face when trying to apply a framework like COSO to their cybersecurity efforts?
Yeah, that's a good point. Often it's making it actionable across different departments. COSO classifies internal control objectives into three main groups, and each one absolutely applies to cyber. So first, you've got operational objectives. These are all about the day-to-day performance, the nitty-gritty safeguards, making sure an organization's IT assets are protected against cyber threats and fraud. It's about effectiveness and efficiency, making sure your IT systems run smoothly and securely. Performance measures, safeguards, all that stuff. Then you have reporting objectives. These focus on increasing the chance that cyber controls are in place so they don't negatively impact reporting financial, non-financial, internal, external. Think of it as ensuring transparency, reliability, trustworthiness in all your reports. So controls to make sure a cyber incident doesn't mess up your company's financial reports. That falls here. And finally, there are compliance objectives. Pretty straightforward. It's about adhering to laws and regulations.
For cyber, this means things like NIST standards. That's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or regulations like HIPAA for healthcare data, maybe even international laws like GDPR for data privacy.
Okay, that paints a clear picture of the strategic goals. So once an organization has these objectives, how do they actually, bake them into their daily operations? That's where the 5 components of the COSO framework come in, right? How do these guide the actual cyber practices?
Absolutely. The first component is the control environment. This is really about the tone at the top. It's senior management setting the example, showing leadership on awareness, guiding IT policies, incident response, and making sure the workforce is educated on safeguarding digital assets. It's the culture, essentially. Does leadership take this seriously?
Got it. Culture first.
Right. Once that cultural groundwork is laid, the very next crucial step is asking, okay, what are we actually protecting against? That's risk assessment. This involves meticulously looking at internal and external factors that could be a cyber threat, figuring out the likelihood, the potential impact. It helps organizations manage their cyber risks down to an acceptable tolerance level. You can't eliminate everything.
Right. Trying to eliminate everything would be impossible and probably bankrupt you.
Exactly. Then we have control activities. These are the concrete policies and procedures, the things put in place to make sure that tone at the top is actually implemented everywhere. These are the actionable rules turning strategy into reality.
The how-to part.
Precisely. Fourth is information and communication. This stresses using consistent language, sharing best practices, communicating effectively with everyone, inside and out. For cyber, this means sharing policies on threats, detection, response. Good examples are management reviews of impact reports, regular employee meetings, company-wide emails, and that mandatory annual cybersecurity training everyone loves.
Yeah, the mandatory training.
Yep. And finally, monitoring activities. This is about continually checking internal controls, identifying vulnerabilities, seeing if controls are effective and efficient. This is super critical in cyber because attacks are always changing. Examples: penetration testing, simulating real attacks; vulnerability scanning, periodic phishing reports to see who clicks.
So, okay, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Looking at cyber risk through the CSO lens really helps management communicate their risk appetite clearly. And if those priorities are set from the top, then the folks doing the cybersecurity work can focus their efforts. They can assess risks in the systems most likely to be hit, pinpoint the vulnerabilities that actually matter most. It brings focus, right? Instead of just throwing money at every possible problem. So CSO gives that blueprint, that strategic mindset. But once you have that, how do organizations actually build these digital forts? What are the practical day-to-day defenses? This is where security policies, standards, and procedures come in. You mentioned a kind of cybersecurity pyramid.
Yeah, that's a good visual. At the very top, you have security policies. These are the bedrock, a high-level overview of security needs, the strategic plan. They define terms, roles, responsibilities, acceptable risk levels. And they're crucial as evidence of due care, showing management took reasonable steps. Think of them like the constitution for your digital security. Examples: policies on data classification, how you select controls, user access rules, monitoring requirements.
Okay, the high-level rules.
Exactly. Then in the middle, security standards. These are the organizational requirements. Could be mandatory by law, could be best practices the company adopts. They're the benchmarks for achieving the policy goals. They define minimum performance levels. So if a policy says sensitive data must be secure, a standard might specify, okay, all sensitive data must be encrypted using AES 256. Common examples are things like NIST frameworks, GDPR, or PCI DSS for credit card data.
Got it. The specific benchmarks to meet the policy goals.
Right. And at the bottom, the base of the pyramid, are the standard operating procedures, or SOPs. These are the detailed step-by-step instructions how to perform specific security tasks. They often involve systems, software, maybe even physical actions, and it's really recommended to segment these SOPs. Don't put everything in one giant manual. That way, no single person has the keys to the entire kingdom, security-wise. Right. Enhances security through need to know.
Makes perfect sense for granular control. Okay, let's dive into some specific types of policies that are really common, starting with one you've probably all heard of, maybe even signed, the Acceptable Use Policy, or AUP.
Oh yeah, the AUP. It's a crucial document. It's designed to regulate and protect the company's tech resources. It assigns responsibilities, lists acceptable behaviors for employees, vendors too, and clearly spells out the consequences if you violate the rules. Users often have to sign it, agree to the terms, before they get access to any company's systems or devices.
So what kinds of things does it typically cover?
Well, key inclusions often cover using personal devices for business, which approve mobile devices you can use, device maintenance, confidentiality rules, and very importantly, monitoring and enforcement of actions on company devices. It also spells out restricted activities, software downloads, security requirements, even what happens regarding access if you leave the company.
So it really covers the whole spectrum of how you can and cannot use company tech. And speaking of mobile devices, those present a unique challenge, right? So organizations often need specific mobile device security policies, sort of a subset of the main AUP.
Exactly. Yeah, poor management of mobile devices is genuinely one of the biggest threats out there. These specific AUPs define policies for tablets, smartphones, smartwatches, you name it, because these devices give access to the same sensitive stuff as a laptop. Key things here are strict password rules, requiring MFA multi-factor authentication, mandatory encryption for data on the device, web browsing rules, rules about connecting to public Wi-Fi, and policies on downloading apps and files.
And probably the most common, but maybe most complex mobile policy is the Bring Your Own Device, or BYOD policy. This allows employees to use their personal phones or tablets for work, connecting right to the company network. What are the unique things to consider here? This is where it gets really personal for individuals, right? Your own phone suddenly has corporate strings attached.
Oh, absolutely. BYOD policies bring unique complexities, like Monitoring employee activity on personal devices, you have to balance privacy versus the need for surveillance to stop bad actors. It's tricky.
Hmm.
Companies also need clear rules on ownership of data on the device. Generally, company records, client info, contacts, that's company property, not the employees. And the real insight here is how your personal device, when used for work, legally kind of becomes an extension of the company. It blurs privacy lines in ways people often don't realize.
That's a huge point.
Yeah.
What else?
Well, the policy also needs to cover personal liability and indemnification. Who pays if there's a breach traced back to your device? And critically, even though it's your device, the company can still dictate restricted activities and app downloads. They have to prevent data breaches, sensitive data leaks, or just creating new ways for attackers to get in. The risk of DYOD are significant. That data leakage, compliance breaches, giving bad actors another door in, it's a huge balancing act, really, between convenience and security.
Okay, so once these comprehensive policies are in place, how do organizations actually, physically and logically protect their networks? What are the actual digital guardians doing the work day in, day out?
Right. Well, first, remember, a network is just a system of connected devices talking to each other, wired, wireless, using protocols, hardware like routers, switches, firewalls. When it comes to security methods, one of the first lines of defense is often network segmentation or isolation. This basically controls network traffic, either blocking outside access or separating internal parts of the network from each other. This pocketed isolation really improves security by containing potential breaches. If one part gets hit, it doesn't automatically spread everywhere.
Like fire doors in a building.
Exactly like that. Then you have the famous firewall. It can be a physical box, can be software, often both. Firewalls filter and monitor traffic, especially going to public networks, and block malicious stuff. Think of it as the bouncer for your network, checking IDs.
Okay, the bouncer. Got it.
And of course, the virtual private network, or VPN. This creates a secure, encrypted tunnel over existing networks. Uses protocols like tunneling or IPsec. This gives incredibly secure remote access to company apps and data, absolutely essential with so much remote work now.
Right. VPNs are everywhere now.
They are. For wireless traffic specifically, we have Wi-Fi protected access protocols. You've probably seen WPA, WPA2, and the latest, strongest one, WPA3. These encrypt the traffic between your device and the wireless access point. WPA3 especially offers much better encryption and more secure handshakes when you connect. Super important if you're on public Wi-Fi.
Good to know. So beyond the network edge.
Right, beyond the perimeter, we have endpoint security. This is crucial. It's the idea that every single device, every host connected to the network needs its own local security, separate from the network-wide stuff. This includes things like antivirus and malware screening software, maybe a local firewall on the device itself, host-based intrusion detection. Each endpoint needs its own little shield.
So defense isn't just at the main gate, it's on every device inside too.
Precisely. And taking a really broad view, there's system hardening. Think of system hardening like fortifying a castle. You don't just build one big wall, you reinforce every potential weak spot. It's a comprehensive security strategy. Reduces risk by minimizing the attack points, the attack vectors, across all your IT infrastructure apps, databases, operating systems, servers, network gear. Fewer doors and windows for attackers to try.
Can you give some examples of hardening?
Sure. For database hardening, you might create different privilege levels for users' admins versus limited need-to-know access and encrypt the data stored in it. Endpoint hardening could involve taking away admin rights from regular users on their laptops, restricting what software they can download. For network hardening, maybe revise firewall rules, close off unused ports that aren't needed. And server hardening might mean physically separating servers, keeping backups in a different geographic location, having really strict testing procedures. It's a whole mindset.
Okay, very thorough. Any others?
One more worth mentioning is media access control, or MC filtering. This tries to block unauthorized devices by keeping a list of approved MS addresses. A MS address is that unique hardware identifier for your network card. So if your device's MSA address isn't on the list, you can't connect.
Right. So this really raises a question for you, the listener. How many of these layers are actually protecting your daily online activity, maybe without you even realizing it? It's a pretty complex web of defenses you interact with all the time. Oh, okay, even with all those network defenses, the human element is still key, isn't it? How do organizations control who gets access to what and what they're allowed to do once they're inside that digital perimeter? This must be where strategic access controls come in.
Yeah, this brings us to some critical practices, often engineered right into the IT architecture. The first one, and it's a big one these days, is zero trust. This is a real paradigm shift. It basically assumes the network is always at risk, even after someone initially logs in. It shifts the focus from that one-time authentication at the door to continuous validation at every point of interaction inside. NIST even has a zero-trust network architecture model to help organizations implement it.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, the key ideas, or tenets, of zero trust include treating all devices and data sources as resources that need securing, even personal devices, requiring all communications to be secure no matter where they are on the network, granting access only on a possession basis, no persistent trust. Also, using dynamic policies to determine access, continuously monitoring the health and integrity of all assets, strictly enforcing all authentication and authorization, and collecting tons of detailed info to constantly improve security.
So it's like that bouncer at the club rechecking your ID every time you try to go into a new room, not just when you first walked in the door. You're never just trusted because you got in once. That's a big change from older security models.
It really is.
Hmm.
Another crucial principle is least privilege. This means users and systems get only the minimum authorization and resources needed to do their specific job, nothing more. This actively fights against privilege creep, where someone's access just grows over time as their job changes, but old permissions never get taken away.
Privilege creep. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It can be. Closely related is need to know. This focuses specifically on the data an employee must know for their job. The difference is subtle. Least privilege is about the access you need to systems or functions. Need to know is about the data you need to see. Both aim to limit exposure.
Okay, limit access, limit data visibility. What else?
And then there's whitelisting. This is where you identify a list of only authorized applications that are allowed to run on company systems. It's generally more restrictive and often more secure than blacklisting, which just tries to block known bad applications. Whitelisting says if it's not on the approved list, it doesn't run, period.
More proactive. Okay. Now, when we talk about who gets in, you mentioned differentiating identification and authentication.
Yes, important distinction. Identification is simply claiming who you are, like typing in your username. Authentication is the process of validating that claim, like entering your password or using a fingerprint. It's proving you are who you say you are. It's really a multi-step process, usually starting with some initial registration where you establish a baseline identity, maybe with a driver's license or something similar.
And once you've identified yourself, there's a whole array of authentication technologies now, right? It's way beyond just usernames and passwords these days. Seems like it's all about layered verification.
Oh, far more sophisticated, yeah. For mobile users, there's context-aware authentication. This uses contextual data like the time of day, your geographic location, the Wi-Fi network you're using, maybe your IP address to help verify you. It adds this dynamic layer, looking at the context of the login attempts, not just the credential.
Interesting. What else?
Digital signatures are pretty cool. They're encrypted electronic stamps attached to messages. They provide non-repudiation, which is a fancy way of saying you can't later deny you sent it, and the recipient knows it hasn't been tampered with, like an unbreakable digital pinky swear for important communications.
Digital pinky swear. I like that.
Then there's single sign-on, or SSO. Very common now. It lets you authenticate just once for a single session, but get access to multiple different resources or devices. Like you log into an app on your smart TV, maybe it shows a code, you enter that code on your already logged in smartphone, and boom, you're in. Convenience without totally sacrificing security.
Okay, SSO is super convenient.
It is. And multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is probably the most widely recommended and strategically important one. This uses 2 or more different factors to validate you. Often combine something you know, like a password, with something you possess, like a security key fob that generates a changing PIN, or a code sent to your phone. Makes it much harder for attackers.
Right, the classic password plus phone code.
Exactly. And of course, biometrics, using your unique physical characteristics. Facial recognition, fingerprints, voice patterns, iris scans, even how you type keystroke patterns. This combines pretty high security with relative ease for the user. No passwords to remember.
That's a massive toolkit of authentication methods. But given they're still the most common way in and often the most common attack vector, let's talk about the critical area of password management. It's almost ironic, isn't it? The most common digital key is also often the weakest link, usually because we humans we want things to be easy.
You're absolutely right. Password management is critical because it's this double-edged sword. Most common authentication, but also the most common attack method. Passwords just have inherent weaknesses. People use easy-to-guess ones, they reuse them everywhere, they share them, they never change them, they write them down. Short passwords are super vulnerable to brute force attacks where attackers just try every combination. And sadly, Passwords stored by companies and databases get breached all the time.
So how do we fight back against weak passwords?
Password complexity standards are vital. The longer a password is, the exponentially more secure it becomes. Seriously, the difference is huge. Going from, say, 4 characters to 8 characters dramatically increases the combinations needed to guess it. NIST recommends at least 8, but honestly, many companies now require 12 or even more. And changing them regularly, maybe every 45 to 90 days, is also a common recommendation.
Okay, longer is better, change them often. But managing all those complex changing passwords sounds like a nightmare. That's where password managers and storage come in.
Yes, exactly. Password managers and storage apps use something called hashing. They take your actual password and use a mathematical algorithm, like SHA, secure hash algorithms, to convert it into a seemingly random string of text, the hash. When you log in, you type your password, the system hashes that and compares the result to the stored hash. If they match, you're in. The key is that hashing is designed to be one way. You can't easily reverse the hash to get the original password back.
Right.
So even if attackers steal the database of hashes, they don't get your actual password. It makes compromising them much, much harder.
Okay, hashing is key for secure storage.
Definitely. And just a quick note on provisioning. This is part of identity management. It's the process of creating a user's account and assigning them the right privileges based on their job role. It's often automated to be part of onboarding. And just as importantly, it includes removing credentials and access when someone leaves or no longer needs it. Prevents that lingering, unauthorized access.
Right, deprovisioning is just as important. And rounding out this section, you mentioned device authentication.
Yeah, validating the specific device making the connection could be based on its unique IP address or MFC address. It's pretty weak on its own, but it significantly strengthens a multi-factor approach. If the system knows it's you via password MFA and it's coming from your known device, that adds another layer of trust.
Okay, so even with strong access controls and solid policies, new weaknesses pop up all the time. Cyber threats are always evolving. Attackers are always finding new angles. So how do organizations stay ahead in this, continuous arms race?
Yeah, it really is an arms race. This is where vulnerability management comes in. It's a proactive security practice. It's designed to prevent attackers from exploiting IT vulnerabilities that could hurt the system or the organization. It involves continuously identifying, classifying, mitigating, and fixing known vulnerabilities. This means constantly detecting and monitoring for configuration changes that might open up new holes, doing periodic vulnerability scans, especially after big system changes, and crucially, fixing the problems you find in a timely way. It's an ongoing cycle.
So what are the key tools or frameworks organizations use for this continuous vigilance? How do they structure this ongoing battle?
Well, one major framework people use is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, or CSF. It has 5 core functions that map really well to vulnerability management. First, identify. Understand your assets, systems, data, employees, and find the vulnerabilities. Know your environment. Second, protect. Put safeguards in place like access controls, secure assets, inform employees. Third, detect. Find vulnerabilities quickly. Look for anomalies. Use continuous monitoring. Fourth, respond. Act when you find something. Analyze it, mitigate it, communicate about it. And finally, recover. Get back to a secure state after something happens. Use recovery plans, make improvements. It's this holistic cycle you see.
Identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Got it.
What about specific tools? Yeah, then you have vulnerability scanners. These are applications that test systems for known security risks. They check against a constantly updated database of threats. They'll scan for open network ports, analyze data packets, try to identify operating systems. But here's the crucial point. Attackers use these exact same scanners to find weaknesses. So it's a tool for both the good guys and the bad guys.
Wow, okay. So you have to scan yourself before they scan you.
Pretty much. And related to that are vulnerability assessments. These are usually done as part of an initial risk analysis and then maybe quarterly or annually. They use those scanners to see if threats are still lingering. But these assessments can also give you a bigger picture, an aggregate view of your IT processes. They might show how a vulnerability in one area could impact another, highlighting systemic weaknesses.
Helping you see the forest for the trees.
Exactly. And to help everyone speak the same language about these vulnerabilities, there's the Common Vulnerabilities and Exposures, or CVE, dictionary. This is a database run by the MADRE Corporation. It gives unique ID numbers to specific security vulnerabilities. This standardizes the naming, which used to be total chaos, and helps companies track and manage security gaps effectively. Everyone knows exactly which vulnerability they're talking about when they use the CVE number.
Okay, a common language is essential. And finally, a key piece of this puzzle is patch management. This is something everyone with a computer knows they should do, right? Click update. But maybe we don't always grasp the full implications.
Absolutely. It's fundamental. As bugs or vulnerabilities get discovered in software, the vendors release updates, called patches, to fix them. Effective patch management means IT admins need to assess if a patch applies to their systems. Test it first, usually on isolated systems so it doesn't break anything critical. Plan how to roll it out, deploy it, and then verify it was installed correctly. It's a continuous cycle because new vulnerabilities and therefore new patches come out constantly. Ignoring patches, like leaving your front door wide open after you heard there's a burglar casing the neighborhood.
Okay, yeah, that's a good analogy. So, given all these potential vulnerabilities, the constant threats, organizations don't just rely on one thing, right? They use layered security. What's the big idea behind that?
The purpose of layered security is basically to protect the organization using a diverse set of security tactics. The goal is that a single cyber attack, or maybe one failed control, doesn't compromise the entire system. It combines physical controls, logical technical controls, and administrative controls, like policies, to provide control redundancy. This redundancy is there to offset potential security flaws if one layer fails during a complex breach attempt. It's about building that fort, like you said. Even if they get through the outer wall, there are inner walls, moats, guards.
Right. More layers, more chances to stop them. And one of the most common layered security strategies is called defense in depth. How does that build these defenses?
Defense in depth is really a multi-layered approach that deliberately doesn't rely just on technology. It combines several layers. Personnel, having skilled experts running the security functions, policies, the rules governing how technology is used. Technology, the actual tools like intrusion detection prevention systems, antivirus firewalls, endpoint security, physical access controls, things like cameras, gates, locks, badge access for server rooms. Can't hack what you can't physically reach sometimes. And finally, logical access controls, those rule-based software and hardware controls like user authentication, MFA, permissions, who can access what digitally.
So it's people, policies, tech, physical, and logical controls all working together.
Exactly. And regardless of the specific name for the strategy, the core idea is redundancy and diversification, using two or more ways to secure the same resource. This eliminates single points of failure and helps counter different types of attacks. Sometimes you even see duplication within duplication for really critical assets.
How do you achieve that redundancy in practice?
There are several ways. One is process layering and isolation. This means breaking operations into smaller chunks. Maybe different people handle different steps, or tasks are isolated by machines using logical controls, like memory constraints in software. Think of a bank vault, maybe? One person might grant remote access permission, another physically takes stuff out, a third person transports it, and they all have to reconcile everything. No single person holds all the keys or performs the whole process.
Separation of duties, essentially.
Right, applied broadly. Another method is abstraction and concealment. Abstraction is about hiding complexity. You only present the relevant info needed for a task. This simplifies things for users, but also limits their access. Security admins can assign specific controls or privileges based on this abstracted view. Users only see what they need to see. Concealment is similar, but focuses mainly on hiding data. Users only get access to data that matches their security clearance level.
Hiding complexity, hiding data.
Yeah. And finally, sometimes you see hardware segmentation. This achieves isolation by physically separating machines. It's less common now with virtualization, but you still see it for really large, maybe geographically spread out networks where maximum physical isolation is needed.
Okay, finally, let's try to categorize all these tools and strategies we've talked about. How do they actually function against a threat? Are they trying to prevent it, detect it while it's happening, or fix things after the fact? It gives us a nice framework for understanding their purpose, right?
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah, well-designed cybersecurity controls, whether they're policies, procedures, or tech, they're designed to mitigate threats at all stages of a potential attack. We usually group them into three main types. First, you have preventive controls. These are designed to stop malicious activity from ever occurring in the first place. They aim to block attackers from getting access to devices, applications, networks.
Right. Think of these as the gates, the walls, the guards trying to keep the bad guys out entirely. They're the proactive, frontline defenses.
Exactly that. Examples include basic safeguarding practices like using strong passwords, MFA, doing background checks on employees, locking your screen when you walk away, having strict data handling rules. Education and training for employees are also preventive. Regular security updates and patches, which we'll see can also be corrective fit here too. Encryption, both for data sitting still at rest and data moving in transit, firewalls. Physical barriers count too. Locked doors, badge systems, security guards, fences, and device and software hardening, minimizing those attack surfaces we talked about. That's a powerful preventive measure. Also, intrusion prevention systems, or IPS. These actively look for attacks based on signatures or anomalies and try to stop them before they reach their target.
Okay, so IPS tries to block, not just warn.
Correct. And within preventive controls, a really critical area is access controls, specifically authorization models. These models define how access decisions are made, who gets access under what rules. There are quite a few, but you can kind of see an evolution from individual control towards more centralized and dynamic models.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. There's discretionary access control, or DAC. This is where the owner of the data manages who can access it. Think file permissions on your own computer. You decide who sees your stuff. Contrast that with mandatory access controls, or MAS. Here, administrators set central rules that apply consistently everywhere, usually based on security labels or classifications. It's non-discretionary, often used in high-security government or military systems.
So DA is individual choice, MAS is system-wide rules.
Pretty much. Then you have more modern approaches like role-based access controls, or RBAC. Access is granted based on your job role. If you're in HR, you get access to HR systems. It simplifies managing permissions for large numbers of users. Or even more dynamic is policy-based access control, or PBAC. This uses a combination of user role and dynamic policies. It might evaluate access based on your identity, role, security clearance, your need at that moment, maybe even the risk level of the request. Much more flexible and responsive. The strategic trend is definitely towards these more dynamic, context-aware, risk-based models.
Okay, that makes sense. And how are these models actually implemented? What's the mechanism?
Often through things like access control lists, or ACLs. These are basically lists of rules attached to resources like files, folders, network devices. The ACL specifies which users or groups have permission to access that resource and what actions they can perform, read, write, execute, etc. You have file system ACLs for files and folders, and networking ACLs, often configured on routers and switches, to control network traffic flow based on source-to-destination addresses, ports, protocols. Now, network ACLs sound a bit like firewalls, but there's a distinction. ACLs are generally more about managing user access and permissions based on identity, while firewalls are primarily focused on protecting the network boundary from malicious attacks based on traffic characteristics. There's overlap, but different primary functions.
Got it. Okay, so that's preventative. What's next?
Next up are detective controls. These are designed to detect a threat, ideally while it's happening. They also provide crucial information for investigations after something bad has occurred.
Right. These are like the alarms going off, the security cameras recording evidence. They tell you something's wrong or help you figure out what happened later. They're all about visibility.
Precisely. Examples include a network intrusion detection system, or NIDS. This monitors network traffic, looks for known attack patterns or anomalies, and sends alerts. Antivirus software monitoring does real-time scans, quarantines suspicious files. Network monitoring tools, things like packet sniffers or network performance monitors, NPM, analyze traffic and statistics, looking for unusual behavior. Log analysis is huge, recording system events, network events, application events, and then monitoring those logs for anomalies or signs of intrusion. And intrusion detection systems, or IDS in general. They scan the environment, warn you about potential unauthorized access. But remember the key difference. An IDS detects and alerts. It doesn't typically prevent the attack itself. That's the job of an IPS, the preventive control.
Detect versus prevent, important distinction. Okay, and the third category.
Finally, we have corrective controls. These are intended to fix known vulnerabilities or problems, usually implemented as a result of a security incident, maybe findings from an assessment, or even just changes in industry best practices. And the interesting thing is, once a corrective control is put in place and working, it often starts acting as a preventative or detective control going forward.
Ah, okay, so these are the repair crew, coming in to fix the damage, patch the holes, clean up the mess, and hopefully make sure it doesn't happen again that way.
Exactly. Examples include reconfigurations, maybe changing system settings, firewall rules after an attack exploited a weakness. Upgrades and patches, as we discussed, are corrective when they fix a known, exploited vulnerability, but preventive once installed. Revised policies and procedures are corrective when you update organizational practices because the old ones allowed an incident to happen. Updated employee training can be corrective, addressing knowledge gaps that might have contributed. Recovery and continuity plans are fundamentally corrective. They minimize business interruption after a disaster or major incident. And finally, antivirus software performing its function of removing malware or quarantining it, that's a corrective action, isolating or limiting the threat that got in. Hashtag outro.
Whew. Okay, that was a truly deep dive into the intricate layers of cybersecurity protecting organizations, from those high-level frameworks like COSO setting the strategy, all the way down to the granular details of password management, MFA, and the continuous monitoring needed to keep everything secure. You can really see it's a constant evolving battle against an adversary that's always adapting.
Indeed. Yeah, if you connect all this to a bigger picture, it just highlights that cybersecurity isn't one single solution. It's this complex, dynamic ecosystem. It requires proactive measures, constant vigilance, and the ability to respond rapidly when things go wrong. It really is like building a fort, brick by brick, layer by layer, and then constantly maintaining it, patrolling the walls, because the threats simply never stop.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you're managing a team, maybe starting a business, or honestly just navigating your own digital life, it seems clear that understanding these mitigation strategies isn't just for the IT pros anymore. It's really a fundamental part of being well informed in our connected world. It empowers you to understand and maybe even advocate for your own digital safety better. So, as you go about your day to day, maybe consider which of these layers you encounter without even thinking about it. Or perhaps think about what single most vulnerable point might exist in the digital systems you use every day. Could be your own habits, could be a company's policy. And what would it really take to strengthen that weak point? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Keep learning, keep exploring, and please stay safe out there.